And here we are, still running up that hill. Stranger Things, Season 4, Part 2. It's 2 episodes and damn near 4 hours. Because this is what happens when you are successful on streaming. They just completely take the restraints off and let you just dick about. Which is kind of what that first of 2 episodes was. It's a heck of a lot of setup. In hindsight, trying to think back and remember what actually happened, not much. Not a lot. And what did happen generally led me to the belief that, okay, well, that just meant you shouldn't have spent so much time, if any, on that plot in the first place. Because a lot of it is focused around 2 things, which hadn't really worked for me in the first part. One was 11 with Papa. I still argue there was no reason to bring him back. I honestly think the only reason he's back is because they had that line drop in season 2 that Papa was still alive, and they didn't really have a plan. They just thought, oh, we'll definitely do that, and then it came time to do it, and they realized they didn't have a good idea for it, and all of his good material was in the flashbacks, so it didn't require him to still be alive, and pretty much everything he'd done could have been done by a very conflicted Dr. Owen and would have been far more interesting, as opposed to this bland guy who finally frickin' drops dead so we can be done with him. Here's one thing I will say. I appreciated that the show set him up trying to get absolution from 11, and she did not give it to him. Good. Screw that guy. Also, 11 pulling down the helicopter. That was pretty cathartic. I enjoyed that. But ultimately, this is where like the entire California plot, the California plot being Jonathan, Mike, Will, and Argyle. Look, I'm glad that an Indigenous actor is getting work. There was no reason for the character to not be Indigenous. I'm happy with that kind of casting, but the character was really dumb and insufferable, and I never found him funny. And he's the kind of character who, if you don't find him funny, is gonna be real painful. He is the Jar Jar Binks of this season. So, didn't love him. But their entire thing, I basically said when I reviewed the first 7 episodes. I guess it counts as the first half if you work out the math on it. I don't know. Whatever they released before. I said that this plot was completely freaking pointless. It finally arrived at the point, and the point was basically to pick up 11 once she busted her way out. Not to break her out, just to pick her up once she got herself out. So basically, it's like having an extended subplot for an Uber driver who's gonna pick up the main character 3/4 of the way through a story. That's effectively what all the time sunk into the California plot amounted to. So, yay? Suppose I should address Will. They're very clearly going for a gay thing with Will, which I don't have a problem with inherently. And it does result in basically the only scene where Jonathan, I thought, did anything of value in like 2 or 3 seasons, which was him reaching out to Will and being like, hey, I know we've drifted apart, but I'm still your brother, and I still love you, and I want you to know you can come to me. So that's a great scene. I will absolutely highlight the hell out of that scene because it's him not trying to force Will to say something that maybe he's not ready to say, but to make it clear that it is okay for him to say it. And I think Will is at a point where he really needed to hear that. That's a great scene. I'm not sure it is worth it for all of Will's looking at Mike and pining and moping and like, okay, I let this go with Robin, but I'm a little bit irritated that this show seems to be doing this thing of gay characters crushing on straight or potentially straight people. At least with Robin, they kind of pan that out later. But like Mike is definitely straight and Will clearly knows that. And like, look, on the one hand, I get you can't necessarily help who you fall for, and sometimes you fall for someone who is not available to you. Maybe it's because they're in a relationship. Maybe it's because their sexuality does not give a place for you to be. Sometimes it's just because they don't see this relationship the same way you do. So I get that's a thing that happens. But, like, I would much rather have seen Mike and Will being supportive of each other. Just like, I look at what goes on with Dustin and Eddie and the fact that the two of them could platonically say, "I love you, man." And it was awesome. And then I look at Will weeping over a straight boy, and I'm like, oh, come on. How can you get the platonic love so right, but then you put a gay male character in close proximity to his straight best friend, and he has to be pining for him? Like, what? So the California plot was completely useless. Most of that first of 2 episodes was badly dragged out. And the whole escaping from the prison for the folks in Russia literally proved to be pointless because they went back. Like, that, again, this is what happens when you give people as much time as they say they want. They don't realize when they've sunk time into plot points that don't need to be there at all. Like, seriously, how much would it have impacted the entire Russia subplot if instead of getting off the base and then going back to the base, they had instead gotten to a more isolated or defensible or unguarded portion of the base, holed up there, and that the helicopter was on site? Would that have actually majorly changed anything? I don't think it would have. All that having them escape and come back did was eat up more time. And that's another, the sense of time. I'm not going to cleanly break up my criticisms across the first and second episode. Look, I will talk about stuff that's good. There is stuff that's good. Much like my opinion on the first bit of season 4. I will talk about the good stuff because the good stuff is very good. But okay. So there's just the sense of time. So we get towards the climax, and we're dealing with Robin, Steve, and Nancy sneaking up on Vecna. We've got Max and 11 dealing with Vecna's mind palace. We've got Lucas and Erica trying to help Max, and then you've got Jason showing up on that. You have the stuff going on in Russia and all of that. And plus you have Dustin and Eddie trying to serve as a distraction in the Upside Down. Now, I'm not going to inherently say that these are too many things happening at once. Honestly, if you balance it correctly, it can come to a really impressive and intense climax. They don't balance it correctly, though, because they will have something start, like characters start getting choked or start getting attacked by something, and then cut to another scene that is supposedly happening simultaneously and stay at that other scene for like 5 minutes. And I'm left going, well, the characters we saw choky are dead. They're just dead now because of how long. And you didn't even like go 5 minutes there and then come back to them. You then went to another 3-minute scene of one of the other subplots, 2 minutes over here. It's now been 12 minutes. There's no way these characters who are being choked are still alive. Oh, but they are, because that's just how we're going to do it. How long did Hopper spend running down the hallways trying to lead a demodog somewhere? He spent like 12 minutes doing that. It's bad. And like a more tightly constructed climax and or a more fluidly transitioned one would both reduce that gap and also, keep me invested so I didn't keep thinking about it, because I did. I thought about it a lot. And of course, compounding all of that is Vecna and how much he talks. I didn't like Vecna before. I didn't think he was good last season. I hate him so much. I hate this Guy, he is he is the worst villain that I have encountered since the live-action remake of Cowboy Bebop and what they did to Vicious, who was already not a good villain, and they made him so much worse. Vecna is not bad in the same way Vicious was bad, but he is the worst villain I have encountered since then. He's really, really bad. How bad is he? Well, if you got to the end and heard the last things he said without groaning, yelling out for fuck's sake, or at the very least rolling your eyes, then you are a stronger person than I am, because he actually says, "This is only the beginning, and you've already lost." What freaking generic placeholder bullshit! Ah! Shut up and die. And of course he doesn't. He doesn't. They make it clear he's still alive, which means he'll be back freaking season 5. The Duffers clearly thought that it would improve the threat to have a villain who could talk, and it has made everything worse. He is a boring, one-dimensional, I want to destroy the world villain. We have no sense of him as a person. He's not even really particularly gleeful about it. He's just so dour and that very incredibly forced growl, deep voice. Like, you can tell this is a voice that has either been modulated or it's somebody whose natural voice is not that deep, forcing it down that deep. Max, I've come for you. It's so bad. It is so bad. And they have removed some of the agency of the friggin' Mind Flayer. They have characters actually say, it was Vecna. It was Vecna the whole time. God, I hate that shit. We had villains who worked on their own. We had a monster. We had the Demogorgon. Worked on his own. We had the Mind Flayer, who was great, because it was weird and Lovecraftian and didn't entirely know how he worked, and then he became a flesh monster in this world in season 3, and it was even weirder, and it was awesome, and he clearly has an intelligence, but you don't know how much of what he's doing is planning. You don't even know if you can comprehend the way that this thing's mind works. And now we just have a dude with vines. How is that better? How is that monologuing dipshit an improvement? How? I hate him so much. He has brought down the show to a lower level than it was or it should be, with his presence and the importance that is being heaped upon his generic ass. I hate him so much. Okay. I said there was some stuff that worked. So I cited the scene with Jonathan and Will. My other thoughts on Will aside. The other thing about making Will gay, by the way, was my read on him in season 3 wasn't gay, it was ace. And I kind of would have preferred to see that. Because I think of season 3, and I think, when characters snap at him and be like, just because you don't like girls. And that could have gone either way. But more importantly to me, the read I had towards the end when Will wants to go back to playing D&D and the others, want to hang out with girlfriends or whatever. To me, I didn't read that as somebody who was trying to find an excuse to hang around with the boy he's crushing on. To me, my read on that was he doesn't share these impulses towards a need or a desire for sexual romantic connection, so he doesn't understand why his friends are being pulled away from him. That was my read on that scene. And I preferred it, because it's a far less explored area in terms of representation, especially in something this mainstream. So there's that too. But anyways, moving on from that, as I said, while I still think there ultimately was very little point in having Papa still be alive, I did really appreciate 11 flatly not giving him the absolution that he sought. I thought Eddie, that was it kind of dumb? The whole electric guitar in the upside down thing. Yeah, but I don't care because it was also kind of awesome. I liked that. I will miss Eddie. Really liked the moment between Dustin and Eddie's uncle. I thought that was wonderfully sweet. Max is the MVP of this season. Absolutely, she does such good work in this, in bringing across the pain that she has been through, trying to grapple with it, her defiance of Vecna. She plays a lot of complicated emotional stuff, and she does it really, really well. So that was really good. Oh, one more complaint. Jason turned out to really ultimately be freaking useless. I guess they wanted to make Lucas feel more useful than simply supporting Max when that was plenty. That was a plenty important job for him to be doing. But no, let's give him a fight with somebody who we're just gonna have get torn apart by the ground opening up. Because yeah, that's fulfilling. I barely noticed that he died in that. I actually backed out. I'm like, wait, did that just kill? Oh, it did. Okay, whatever. And I'm sure the ending's supposed to be a hook, but given that they continue to big up the importance of Vecna, I kind of don't care. He's ruining the show for me. He is so painfully generic and deeply uninteresting. The only thing that was even slightly interesting about him was the twist with him being Henry or one. But once that reveal actually happens, that has no meaning. That actually does almost nothing to impact later scenes, the fact that that is the case. So ultimately, that's kind of a pointless twist. Because the twist only matters if that new information alters the course of things going forwards, change the way that the heroes deal with him, brings us to a better understanding of the way he behaves, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. He just is this way. And the fact that he used to be a human changes absolutely nothing about how they approach him, how they try to deal with him, or how he operates. He could have been a creation of the Upside Down, and you would have to change absolutely nothing about how he operates. You just lose about, I don't know, hour and a half worth of flashback material from the season as a whole. But it didn't matter. But that twist was the only thing even vaguely interesting about him, and even that didn't matter. I'm annoyed because clearly the Duffers like this character. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it clear that he's still alive. And that worries me greatly because that, to me, says they don't understand what an awful, generic garbage monster they made. They really don't understand that at all. And that really worries me. Because the idea of another season is hard for me to get excited about when I'm taking it for granted that Vecna comes back. I just don't care. And while there's still good stuff in here, I actually kind of like some of the Yuri stuff. I liked with him and Enzo. I forget the guy's real name, but Enzo talking him into things. I enjoyed that. The reunion of Eleven and Hopper was real nice. The characters finally coming back together was good. The stuff with Robin, and I can't even remember her name now at the end, that was cute. But and also I feel like having the Upside Down actually invade Earth, actually break through to Hawkins. I don't know. I'm not going to say there's no good stories that can be mined out of that, but when you build something around this hidden thing that's going on underneath the surface, it's hard to pay that off with and now it's broken through. Like, I'm not saying you can't do something with that, but like part of the appeal of the show was all this stuff happening just below the surface, but now it's on the surface. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it's kind of why I So now, what is it? A post-apocalyptic story? Because that's a very different genre from what we've been doing. I don't know. I don't know. The stuff that I enjoyed in the first half of season 4 was still good, but Vecna, Henry, 1, whatever the hell he is, I dread the show sinking more time into him, especially knowing next season's the last season and they've set him up to come back. Yay! What'd you think of these last 2 episodes of Stranger Things? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comment. Let's talk about it. Patreon's what pays the bills. If you want to support my being a whiny bitch about this stuff. Well, if you don't want to actually support me that way, like, share, subscribe are still helpful. All the usual stuff, but don't worry too much about it. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time we need a break. All right, I've got thanks to give for my Patreon supporters. Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfala, Tarak, The Thing That Goes Doink in the Anime, Oliver B., Linda Walters, Emu Delki, The Oath of Boyd, TT, Fernobulax the Poodle, Zach, Idolin, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Kasperl, Toku BL Huvian, Adam RDL Taylor, Shane Ross, Shayla Gourlay, and Brendan LaRose. The Rats and I thank you.